Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with a Market Monday type video. We're going to discuss what I am tentatively calling the Market Meltdown question mark, because that is the question. Are we in the verge of a complete meltdown in the market, or is this just a blip in the overall very bullish market that we've had throughout the summer heading into the holiday season? So, of course, the big news right now is Spider-Man is not faring well compared to its pre-sale prices and has had a massive collapse in the price of collector boosters and play boosters. And even we've seen vendors dump a lot of pre-release kits on the open market. And the other thing that is also not faring well is collector boosters, or excuse me, Commander. So the reprints for Commander are not being absorbed like they have been with the last few reprints of things like Bloomburrow or Ixalan. We'll go over these one by one, and I'll give you my thoughts on them going forward. So let's discuss, of course, the elephant in the room, which is the Marvel Spider-Man. I got to weigh in on this one. We've had basically, I like to call it kind of the creators, the content creators are the ones that are really poo-pooing the set more than anything. And I know that there is also... I mean, nothing just exists in a vacuum, but I think that when some of the bigger names of like the Saffron Olives and the Turning Community Colleges and those type of people, they don't like a set, of course, there's going to be the residual feelings of other people. And I've had a lot of mixed feelings personally about this, anecdotally about this set. So first of all, our pre-release did very well. We had a great reception. I personally love this set. I'm not a fan of Universes Beyond, not a fan of Marvel or Spider-Man, but this set just did really well for kind of sparking the brewer interest. And that's where I come from, is like someone likes to actually play with the cards and have really synergistic sets. And if you want to see more about my thoughts about Spider-Man, I do have a channel called The Rogue Deck Builder, and I give you my previous experience as well as I touch on it on my Gone Rogue Game channel. So I think there is a bit of that where you have a few more of the viral videos from the bigger content creators that did not like the set, and there will be, of course, a market reaction. And the data is coming in from a lot of other stores that did have very lackluster pre-releases, especially compared to the last few ones, with Final Fantasy varying in, like, we've never seen anything like Final Fantasy, and Edge of Eternities was able to just really ride that wave. And now we're into this Universes Beyond Spider-Man set that obviously it's just not doing as well as everyone's expectation, and we're having a lot of people just jump ship. So as I stated, like the collector boosters, play boosters, and even more warning is the amount of pre-release kits that are now being dumped on the market at near distributor cost. So that does show me that stores are trying to recoup capital, or stores that did have pretty terrible pre-release attendance, which these stores are weird. I don't know why you don't just break down your pre-release packs at that point and put them in, use them to fill up your little acrylic cases or displays to sell packs. Because if you are a store, you'll be selling loose packs like crazy. And I don't think there's any reason to be dumping especially pre-release kits. Like pre-release kits are one of the worst things to dump back on the market at distributor price, because oftentimes you can break them apart for positive EV with the, if you've noticed, that's one thing I have to talk about on this channel sometime in the future, is we do have a kind of spread now. We do have a multiplier, is what I like to call it, for pre-release foils. So there was a whole era where pre-release foils were not worth more than foils, and now we're starting to see pre-release foils actually have a multiplier. If you want to take a look at like Final Fantasy pre-release cards, those cards actually have a hefty premium of, we are in this era of collectors trying to collect every version of a card, and we're starting to see that actually impact the market. So another discussion for another day for that, but that's what we're seeing for Spider-Man. Now, do I feel this is a blip? I do. I think the market's already starting to absorb all of the panic sellers. So we saw the panic selling race to the bottom get to about the 560s, and the lowest one sold was for 568, and there were multiple copies sold at that. And we look at the view more data, you can see that it has recovered since this was like midday, that we had a bunch selling for 568, and now we're back up to 584. And there is basically this ceiling, though. There is a seller that does have 92 copies of them at 595. So that's kind of the new ceiling for a while for the collector boosters, until this gaming company actually does this sort of supply gets evaporated by demand, and then things can start to go up. But as they are selling, as you can see, today is no exception to how hot this product is. I mean, no, it did just release, but we're well above the average daily sold of 21. So I think that now the prices have come down, it actually has caused a spurt of buying, like a buying spree happening of people that are willing to actually pay this price. I mean, that's how markets work. Like, a lot of people were not willing to pay $800. A lot of people were not willing to pay $1,000 for Final Fantasy. But there were enough candidates over time where it was able to creep up to that point. And we all said that Spider-Man was out the gates too strong. Like it should have been pre-selling for $800, $900 to begin with, as people were trying to jump the gun. It took Final Fantasy months to get there, and there shouldn't be an unproven set that just outdoes like the best-selling set of all time. So I think this is more of a price correction. I don't think this is anything to really be worried about this set particular, because this is still a pretty good spread in the scope of things if you compare it to even things like even Tarkir Dragonstorm or Foundations or any of the other recent, like Aether especially. Like, this is definitely no stinker. So the sky is not falling with Spider-Man. I think the biggest worrisome sign is those pre-release kits, and it just kind of showcases kind of the stupidity of these stores now that have no patience whatsoever and just dump when like nobody wants to be left carrying the heavy bags. But historically speaking, in those last few years, there haven't been such things as heavy bags, where a little bit of patience and things start to cover. Now, that is a good segue into our next topic that I want to talk about, because the Commander decks have had a massive reprint on the hot ones of the basically the standard era of Commander. So Bloomburrow, Ixalan, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and Final Fantasy have had reprints, and they all got reprints at the same time. There was a very, very little reprint. I don't know if it was even a reprint or more of a restocking of Doctor Who and of Fallout and of Duskmourn, but those have already been absorbed, and the market's already adjusted back for those. But the ones that did get announced, planned reprints where you could actually put in numbers with distributors were Bloomburrow, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and Final Fantasy. And boy, has the market actually panicked for this. So all of these are actually very close to near distributor price. Like, I'm a bit frustrated because what I've been trying to do, of course, is build up my numbers too. And typically when distributors announce that there's going to be a reprint, you never get as much as you put in for. So if I wanted like 50 Bloomburrow Commander decks, I'd put in for 200 to try to guarantee the 50. Well, all of the numbers that I put in with distributors, I got it all, and they have excess at the distribution level. So there are a couple of theories I have for this. My big theory with this is there's no Commander product for Spider-Man, and there's no Commander product for Last Airbender. There is the Commander bundles, but that is not like that's more of a supplementary product rather than a main product. And so people that actually want to build Commander decks are going to have to go back and pick up decks maybe they haven't had the chance to get because they were expensive or there just was no supply. And that obviously is Bloomburrow, Ixalan, and Final Fantasy. Those were the Commander decks that did need a reprint. And I think that the market actually melting down over these particular products is a little bit like I've always stated that people are they're looking at the wrong product for something that ages well. So collector boosters have historically not aged as good as Commander decks. Like, you can take most products on average. So even look at like Bloomburrow and Ixalan that have incredibly expensive Commander decks or collector decks at this point, and even go back to like Wildsville Drain and look how expensive those collector boosters are. But the Commander decks also have increased at oftentimes at a better rate than collectors. And this is just a very utility driven product. Like, these Commander decks do not have value in them to justify their prices when they get as high as they do, yet consumers still buy them. And that shows a very utility driven and convenience driven product of where people that do miss out on these Commander decks and join the fray later on, they go back and actually buy these Commander decks in the set, and that drives the prices up. So I'm incredibly bullish on these Commander products. I'm going to try to give my justification for them here, and why I think they are good buys from now until inevitably the prices will start to increase on these products, because I think these will be the last reprint of Bloomburrow and Ixalan for sure. Final Fantasy will probably get multiple subsequent reprints, but if it's anything like Lord of the Rings, we saw Lord of the Rings basically get it dump when there was a reprint and recover every time that they didn't do a reprint in like 2 or 3 months, and rinse and repeat. And I am thinking this last Lord of the Rings reprint probably is the last reprint. Like, I don't think we got an official last call for Lord of the Rings Commander decks, but they are starting to go back up into the 180s, and we'll take a look at this now. So let's look at Bloomburrow first off. So Bloomburrow was the last one that did get its reprint. So it started off with Final Fantasy, then into Lost Caverns, and now into Bloomburrow. And so these will come down a bit more. So I paid, like, distributors were weird with this one. Like, one of them was charging $155. So this is well below distributor costs. Some stores are losing money on if they pre-order at that price, or I guess pre-order is not the right restocked at that price, and then it was 145, then 135. And I wouldn't be surprised if you'll start to see deals from distributors down to even lower cost than that. So these prices will come down for transparency. They will come down. I am selling them right now for patrons at 135. I think that's a good average of what I paid from utilizing the 4 distributors that did allow for the restocks of these. And they are an open order, meaning there are plenty to order. I can reorder them for distributors at that cost or even possibly a little bit lower. And I think that the stores will start to inevitably give up on this product. They were probably like me. They probably thought that this was like a very small wave of being a reprint, very similar to the last time these were reprinted or Ixalan was reprinted, and they would recover a lot quicker or just sell out the gates. Like one of the last reprints of Ixalan didn't even like bump the market. It stabilized it, but it didn't even like affect it. And so stores that did put in for pre-order or restock requests and did get fulfilled, were able just to immediately sell at like the market price that was out there. And at that point, I think Ixalan was like 180. And so they got in for like 115, 125. And now, mind you, distributors have gotten a lot more greedy with this sort of things because they're trying to make a buck too. So they're trying to anticipate what they can sell it as. I don't know what like the deals they have or the agreements they have with Wizards of the Coast of what they can sell it at, but obviously there's a little bit of wiggle room with that, and distributors were a lot more bullish on these products when they were restocked, and hence that's why stores had to pay a lot more out the gates for fear of like missing out again on this, like these being 205. So distributors 155 is probably not that. And comparatively speaking too, like a lot of these older products that are now getting reprinted are getting readjusted in price to kind of match the newer age products. So Commander decks right now, they've been coming out from like Aether Drift forward, have been a little bit more expensive. And I think so these reprints, you'd assume that, okay, they need to adjust those accordingly to match those prices of those decks. As I stated, there really isn't anything out of Bloomburrow that is super crazy, like price-wise, to open up. If they do get like really low on price, there is a way, there is a world where people could break these down and make money. I'm not sure if this one has a sample commander pack, but a lot of them do. And you'd be surprised each one of those sample collector packs actually do have a pretty good EV expected value for each one of those that actually is relevant when accounting for how much basically a commander deck is worth. So as you can see, there's nothing over like $10 in most of these Bloomburrow. There's a few like $5 cards, and at that point it's not, you'll get feed the death. It's like at that point, you're paying like 35% fees if you're selling on something like eBay or TCG Player. So you have to kind of keep that in consideration of even the lower end cards. Oftentimes, there's like a break-even point when you get down to like the 35-cent and below cards. Anyway, on this one, there is like a Lotus Cobra. I can't believe that's actually recovered. It's been a while since I've seen Lotus Cobra actually worth money. And an Alchemist Talent in this Bloomburrow deck that is above $5. And then we do see an $11 card in this Polywog Prodigy and a $12 Helm of the Host, actually. So, yeah, some decent stuff in these. Of course, these prices should come down too because inevitably there will be some stores that give up on trying to sell the sealed product. They're bulky. It's tough to recoup. And, if you're trying to ship stuff, you get killed by like going from New York to California. It's going to take like even a commander box like this is going to take 20 to 25 bucks. I think stores are starting to figure out that, yeah, that's a losing proposition if you keep doing that from coast to coast. And this last deck is definitely kind of the stinker deck with really nothing in it. But as I stated, the reason why I am very bullish on these particular products is I've seen it in action in my own store. Like, we sell by far more than anything commander decks. And if you actually look at the market on most of these too, you got to think too that this is like 4 cases sell per day, but each one of these individual decks also sells when people, and they sell more frequently than people buying in case counts. So oftentimes one of these decks will spike up in price to justify even the entire case of the boxes. We saw that, I think, in this one, the Celestia one, if I remember correctly. Can't quite remember which one was the hot one. I think it was Celestia, the rabbit one. Out of this one, and definitely the vampires and the dinosaurs out of Ixalan spiked up in value. And I think some of the other ones actually spiked up at 1.2. But anyway, so that is Bloomburrow. I think that if you get in anywhere from the 155 all the way down, if you can get it for cheaper, all the way down to like, if you can find it for like 115, 125, that range I think is pretty good for these commander decks, because I do believe they'll go back up to their 200 highs after quicker than you'd think. So you see this last reprint here in May. It wasn't a lot of time before it went back to 200. So these pre-sold for insane prices. This was also a commander deck that didn't have a lot of supply when they underprinted it for release. And then there was some more supply that came in here, and then it dumped the prices all the way down. But this one never really bottomed to as low as most commander decks did, and then recovered after its last reprint up to 205. And I would not be surprised if it does the same thing. Even these might be a little bit of blips where you see these little dips here where they fell because of a restock. Like again, there is kind of a difference between a restock and a reprint. Well, we're kind of splitting hairs talking about it because either way distributors are getting access to more. But Wizards of the Coast does sometimes. That's what I think happened with Duskmourn and Fallout. With these last restocks of distribution, both those had gone away. You couldn't get them at distribution, and now you can again. And I think they weren't reprinted; they were just restocked from Wizards of the Coast, meaning they still had some supply of their own. But Final Fantasy, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and Bloomburrow definitely had like official scheduled reprints for them. All right, so let's move on to Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Lost Caverns of Ixalan actually got hit really hard by this reprint. It was 225 before it had the reprint, and now it is all the way down to 135 and keeps on going lower. This is another one that I'm going to be losing money on some of my own personally ones because I bought it at 155, then at 145. And some distributors I think have them for lower, but my main distributor that still offers these at 135 a piece after like all the distributor fees and you know basically to get the product in hands of customers. That's how much it costs me. So again, these stores they're pretty close to either breaking even or actually losing money on these 135. So of course these are going to have to go back up. It's typically you have this glut right here of stores that just are on the kind of the cash flow business operation where they don't care. They just get everything in, buy as much product as possible, try to wash it out the door so they can actually get access to trying to build up just like numbers with distributors to get this juicy stuff that does sell. If that's their business model, that's their prerogative. I think that's a lot of labor just to try to and a lot of losing money on products just to potentially gain money on other stuff. And more power to them if they're willing to go that route. But most stores don't have the stomach to do that, and I think that this is more align with the price on the 165s of what the true value of these are right now on kind of the more open market. Maybe this 150, there seems to be a lot of copies in this range and stuff. So I think these ones will get eaten up quite a bit. I doubt these people will restock these after they sell them. I think, again, they're just trying to wash their hands of them. It didn't perform as well as they thought this reprint would do. And now you're going to move on and try to move their money into other stuff that will give them better margins. However, this is the one I love because this one has a lot more data of a reprint, a spike to 217, fall back down to nothing. We saw this again. So this is basically last year. We're seeing this exact same thing happen last year, and it took a while for this to recover, but it did. Back in 6 months later in July, it was already back up to 178, and right before the reprint it went up to 220s. Now, if this doesn't get a reprint, this is a very, very good product. The Lost Caverns of Ixalan are probably the best commander decks done in a long time because they hit the sweet spot of being like these highly sought after tribal decks. So both dinosaurs and vampires continue to be highly sought after decks to build around in the commander format, especially for casual players. The thing about the Ixalan deck that makes it even a better product is one of the most played Edgar Markov decks in commander basically just needs the Ixalan deck to upgrade it. So basically if you build it, you get all your white-black cards from the Ixalan deck, and it's actually really good stuff for the Edgar Markov. So you just pick up an Edgar Markov, you pick up an Ixalan, you basically are 9/10 of the way of actually building the deck there. So it's a pretty good deck outside the box with a little bit of mana base upgrade and swapping into red to make that work. And the dinosaur deck is incredibly popular. Out of the box, these were some of the best ones that people love just to pick up. And that's just the kind of the mentality of commander players. Commander players love these precons. So we've had a completely kind of cultural shift of how people feel about precons. Precons used to be mainly broken down. When we did have the once per year commander decks, they were highly sought after, and then when Wizards started doing them every set, there began to be kind of wall fatigue and people skipping sets, and then it was kind of the joke that these things, like Baldur's Gate was broken down more than anything. Stores finally gave up on it and just broke down tens of thousands. I know a store owner that broke down tens of thousands of Baldur's Gate commander decks, and the profit margin was just the collector commander. That's a lot of labor to do that, but it is what it is with that. And the singles were actually selling quite well from Baldur's Gate's commander, and people didn't have the interest of actually playing out just buying the box, and that is shifted now. People are now more lazy. I don't know if that's the right way to see it, or just they value their time more. And they choose to buy pre-constructed commander decks and build off of them. Or even people just want singles will buy an actual commander deck because they need the Soul Ring, they need the Arcane Signet, they need the mana base. Let's buy a precon. It'll get me that, again, like 5/10 of the way of building this new deck or this new card that I just pulled out, this latest set, to try to build a commander around. So Lost Caverns is another one that the single prices are not that great, but we have seen some of these prices go up in value quite often if they don't get reprinted. That's kind of the problem with Commander, though, is they continue to reprint the same cards over and over. So again, I think that these things' appeal is always going to be the convenience outside the box and kind of the novelty of the Commander decks. And we have that whole subset culture in Magic that just plays Commander. And they right now, what I'm seeing personally, like anecdotally and data, like looking at the data, is Commander players do choose to buy multiple of these per year, per set, and kind of play them. So, each time it's like always the Commander night right after like the latest set drops. People are all playing the precons, and we sell out of the precons for that week. So again, we do have some like $12 cards here in the Vampire deck. There are some, not really too many decent cards out of this. I guess we got Wave Goodbye here out of the Explorers of the Deep. And then the Velociraptor actually used to have some very expensive cards in. I can't remember which one was the expensive card, but I think it's got some subsequent reprints in other sets and have definitely kept the price low of the particular singles in this set. So again, Lost Caverns, though, I'm very, very bullish for long-term for it, because I think this is a product that has been tried, tested, and true, and is pretty much immune to reprints. It seems to continue to have the demand outstretch the supply every time it gets reprinted. And again, Bloomburrow and Lost Caverns, I really do think these are going to be the last printing of these before they rotate out of standard and kind of get out of that print life cycle. So they didn't redo even things like Wilds of Drain has not got a Commander reprint, and that's a pretty expensive Commander at this point, and has really nothing in it. And I know same thing with like Kamigawa, like those are expensive Commanders, and they really weren't that great. Like if you compare Wilds of Drain and Kamigawa to these ones of both Bloomburrow and Lost Caverns of Ixalan, like they're night and day which ones are the better product. All right, so on to Fallout. Since I did mention it did have that restock, you can see it's gone down from like the 170s as distributors have had access to actually restock this from Wizards of the Coast, and now it's all the way down to its low for a while at 150. But you can see it actually there isn't a lot of them that live in this area. So we got this one store that has 12 copies of them, and they start to jump up into 160s, 170s. So I'm not sure if this one has had its last call, if it's going to get another reprint. If not, this one actually does have some good cards in it, and I think that it has some very unique cards that are hard to reprint. So I think this one actually has an edge over something like Lost Caverns or Bloomburrow, because I think it is harder to not reprint this particular box set. We don't know if it is going to get another reprint, but to reprint cards in the future for these particular cards. So if it's anything of Warhammer, that's kind of been the Warhammer. Warhammer was a Commander product that would spike up, and then they reprinted it, spike up, and then reprint, and then stores gave up on it because they thought it would just be reprinted forever, and then all of a sudden it snuck up, and those are expensive now. And so I would not be surprised to see Fallout follow a very similar path that something like Warhammer did, and maybe in a few years, or even maybe 6 months, we're going to be looking back at Fallout like, wow, this was a great time to get in on this product, as it was just, there's a lot of these cards are pretty fun, or these Commander decks are pretty fun outside the box. I know many of them have been pretty beloved by the Commander community, especially the pre-con community. And last one of this, we have Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy had its major reprint. This is another one that distributors kind of suckered everyone into getting at 185. I think they're 400 when there's reprinted between 300 and 400, as you see here. I guess 300. We have the data right here. And then they got that reprint, and they were selling quite a bit per day. And now this has definitely slowed down. There's not a lot of sales per day, as I think everyone that wanted the Commander decks finally has their Commander decks. A lot did sell between that 165, 185 range of when it was reprinted. And there is still a lot of these available at distribution level. So I don't know if we've seen the bottom for Final Fantasy, but yeah, a lot of stores did get in on the reprint at 185, then 175, and then 165 again, as distributors kind of test the water for these. And I mean, this is basically break-even cost for an entire page of Final Fantasy. So this one's going to take a lot of time to actually be able to go back up in price. But as stated, Lord of the Rings is a very good example of how these definitely do fare throughout their print runs. And I don't know if this one will see the same amount of printing as Lord of the Rings did. That was a different time period with they really reprinted the hell out of Lord of the Rings Commanders, and the market absorbed them just fine. You got to think that Final Fantasy is the best-selling set of all time, so our Commander deck's going to follow that sort of trajectory? Are they going to, I mean, because if they are, then they're going to outperform Lord of the Rings and have a much easier time of recouping back up to where, you know, these are profitable. So I am pretty, you know, still bullish on these. I think they will get multiple waves. I think that you got to be careful with this particular product because every time it does go up in value, then Wizard of the Coast will just reprint it. So keep that in mind. But there is like the printers are going to be cycling away from commander decks now into play boosters. That's the next big announcements is play boosters having a reprint. And as I don't think I finished my thought earlier in this video with the commander decks, like there are no commander products for Spider-Man and for Airbender. So I think a lot of these commander products, specifically this Final Fantasy commander deck, will continue to be purchased, and the supply is going to be pretty much outstretched by the demand pretty quicker, sooner than later, in my opinion, for this particular product. All right, so on to the other ones I mentioned in this one is like Universes Beyond. This one is now being limited by distributors. I have a distributor I can get 2 per week of these now. It was 4, it was 8, so they're really running low on supply. And these are now at 180s. I think the last price I was able to get in on these was either like 155 or 165. And distributor keeps like ticking it up, lowering the count of how many you can get. There are only a few distributors left where these are available, maybe even one. So if this does not get a reprint, this is definitely the winner that will go up quicker than the rest of them. It already has had a bit of a spike from its July low of 160 up to 180. Again, we don't know if there's another reprint down the line for this because is Fallout before this or Doctor Who? I can't remember which one came first. I think Doctor Who did. So maybe it's out of its print run cycle, and this one actually didn't do the greatest for a Commander product, so maybe they're a little bit hesitant on reprinting this. And this could be just the it for Doctor Who. If it is, I think this is a great product to pick up right now. And of course, Lord of the Rings. I do believe there is one more scheduled reprint for Lord of the Rings. We don't know if that is Commander decks or set boosters. Both of them have had a recent reprint, but I know it is on the docket. Like I did get a glimpse at like the official what distributors have been able to put in, or what they're anticipating is going to get reprinted from Wizards of the Coast. And I believe Lord of the Rings will have another like January, February reprint. So Commander decks, though, have been aging very well in the last few weeks. You can see it going up from, well, it's been pretty stagnant, these 170s, but then 174, and then 160. Yeah, so it wasn't like less than a month ago it was in the 160s, and now we're up to all the 177s. So the one seller there, you can definitely see that too. It's just like one seller, and then they finally get bought out of that one seller that has, you know, dozens of copies. Seems like this 177.87 just must had a vendor that had a ton of copies, and now they've been finally bought out, and so we're starting to have all the residuals that are on here that are we have what, 12 copies here, 13 copies under 195, and then we jump up to 195, and there's only, you know, another 10 copies before the 200, and so on and so forth. So Lord of the Rings, I think there's actually some time to get in on these and actually have a little bit of bump before this does get a reprint in January. And January is actually a long time in the holiday season scope of things. We do have some other products I know that are going to be competing, of course, with Last Airbender having so much of a hype and having a Final Fantasy holiday set that probably will be very, very hyped up. But yeah, don't let these sneak up on you. I think Lord of the Rings are a pretty good pickup at this point. So that's all I think I have discussion. Again, if you are a Patreon, I do have all these available right now for purchase at distribution cost, or yeah, I think all of them are still available at what I can currently get them at distributors. And so you can definitely check out the sheets and whatnot to order these particular Commander products. As I said, I do have a lot of these that are definitely burned a hole in my, or not burning a hole, the opposite. They're cluttering my inventory space that I'd like to move. So, you know, transparency for transparency's sake, but I do think that these are pretty good pickups, and that's why I'm not too concerned about holding on to these at the moment. That's why I'm not like trying to fire sell or race the bottom with some of these other vendors, because I do think that they are going to age well over time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and this has been Kevin from the Rogue Market. Like I said, if you'd like more of this content, definitely go and check out the Gone Rogue Games channel. That's where I'm most active. I do apologize again. I know I sound like a broken record. I sound like a broken record, sounding like a broken record, saying that I want to start producing content for the Rogue Market. This is the channel that I'm still more kind of the more, this is the most fun channel that I have, because I really like discussing the market. And so if you do enjoy this, leave me a comment and help me get motivated again with the algorithm of producing content for this channel. But if you want to stay in touch, Gone Rogue Games, I produce there all the time. This has been Kevin with Gone Rogue Games and the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.